All right, so welcome everyone to this Q&A. Again, want to welcome everyone. This Q&A, something comes up, a lot, and it's always, as we always say, good things need to be repeated, or let's say should be repeated, and that is the importance of anyone, who's a Noahide, came out of paganism, anyone new to Judaism, or a convert. Pretty crucial that someone should have das Torah. They should have a rabbinical authority that they can go to, that knows how to deal with them, can answer their questions, etc. Because person, going through this process, going through life, in general needs guidance, right? Even rabbi needs guidance, right? Everyone needs guidance. We look at things in a certain way. We have certain biases, right? We definitely have certain biases. So it's always good to get, objective opinions from people who are worthwhile to get their opinions from. Right? There's a lot of fraud out there. We've spoken about that in general. But the Mishnah in Pirkei Avos states clear, and spoke about this at length. You can find it on my playlist on YouTube on Ethics of Our Fathers, Pirkei Avos. And that is the idea of the Mishnah says acquire yourself a Rav, right? Find yourself a rabbi. Now, that can mean a number of different things. That could mean maybe not someone has much greater knowledge than you, but even somebody that, let's say, has equal knowledge, right? But you're getting advice. You're asking them, a question where maybe you know the answer. Maybe you have certain biases. You want to look at it maybe from a different angle, or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily mean someone who's necessarily, rabbi per se. It could be someone, of equal knowledge, or maybe even lesser knowledge. Right, lesser knowledge, but you're bouncing ideas, off them, right? As the Talmud says that a teacher, gets greater knowledge, not just learning on their own, but teaching others. Why? People ask good questions, right? People ask good questions, makes their teacher much sharper. Right, because they may know a lot of things, but they ask from different angles, deeper questions, whatever, right? So it sharpens them, right? Definitely, it definitely sharpens them. Now, the Mishnah Pirkei Avos says, acquire rabbi might even mean, person may have to pay out of pocket, right? Literally, you pay them for their services, for their time. You don't have a lot of money, this and that, okay. Right? But a person has to realize also time's worth something. Right? Definitely time is worth something. But even so, a person may have to do that. But even if that's not the case, I'm gonna get to it one day, in Pirkei Avos. Even if it's, even if someone's giving over their time, right? And it's, and it's not for pay, doesn't matter. Right. The point is, the person needs guidance. Now, I've seen, more often where sometimes, someone will say, "Yeah, I've been learning for a number of years, or for a long time, or whatever the case is." And then I see they ask a question that's, a little bit mind-boggling. I don't mean mind-boggling in the sense that, it's a deep question. Whatever. It's a question that they've been learning for a long time, and they, been listening to all kinds of different classes, then they should have got that knowledge. Right? Question: why didn't they get that knowledge? I don't know. Right? I don't have a good answer. I don't even have a bad answer. Right? I don't even have a bad answer. So sometimes I'm pleasantly or unpleasantly surprised with the fact that, if a person's been learning for X amount of time, on a daily basis, there's a certain level of knowledge I think, people should have. It's going to be all inclusive? No. Right? There's a lot of information. a lot of topics, a lot of information, right? But at the end of the day, sometimes, again, something will come out. I'll think it's a basic question, but, how did the person miss it? And so why do I bring this all up? I saw an article where they asked, they asked a bunch of different public speakers the following question. If a person listens, to a lot of, to a lot of classes, they watch a lot of videos on YouTube on all kinds of different Torah topics, do they still need a Rav? They still need a rabbi, flesh and blood. Not just, maybe a number of the questions get answered, right, in different videos. So that was the question that was posed. So what would be the obvious answer? Obvious answer is videos are not the same. They're not the same as having someone that you can go, get answers to, get advice, different things. Because, a lot of times people make mistakes, and the Talmud bears this out. Talmud says this explicitly, you can never make assumptions. Now, what does it mean you can't make assumptions? You cannot say, well, the rabbi said like this over here. They said like that over there. So therefore, I can say, well, these two things are similar in this case. Now, how do you know to do that? How do you know to make such a statement? Just because, the rabbis may say certain things does not necessarily give you the right to say, well, it applies to this also. I've seen that a lot also. I'm not saying people do it on purpose. They're doing it, to ask a legitimate question, right? But sometimes people come thinking they have a little more background, a little more knowledge than they actually have. And they say, well, this is similar to this is similar to that, so therefore this should be true. But it's not. May not be, right? Mathematics, you might be able to do that in geometry, right? This, a parallelogram. This is like this is like that, so this angle is going to be like this, right? Or hexagon, whatever, right? Well, whatever it is, there's internal logic. There's internal logic, certainly by mathematics. By Torah, there's also internal logic, right? There's also internal logic, because if I know certain things, and I know something was said before, right? Let's say, this class I give in the book of Leviticus, chapter 16, we already know from book of Leviticus chapter 10. I already have information that a Kohen is not allowed to go in the Holy of Holies whenever he wants. Right? He can't drink. He can't drink before he serves in the tabernacle of the temple. Right? One of the reasons, or possible reasons, that Nadav and Avihu died. Right? The sons of Aaron are Kohen. So very good. But now I go to the book of Leviticus chapter 16. Right? So I've given 8 hours worth of classes on one verse. We're still holding on verse 1. Nonetheless, I'll probably be there, I don't know, another week or so at least. But now I know it says after the death of sons of Nadav and Avihu. Okay, but the Torah doesn't tell me anything. And then the Torah doesn't tell me what happened. Right? It just says after their death. And then it says you can't go into the Holy of Holies whenever you want. Next verse. Now the question is, Torah already told me a number of reasons why. Why is the Torah bringing it over there? Right now, if I already have previous knowledge, what's the whole point here? Not to show off my knowledge here, right? In order to see that book of Leviticus chapter 10, what does it tell me? Book of Leviticus chapter 10 already gives me information. I already have information about the death of the two sons of Aaron, of Nadav and Avihu. Right? Book of Leviticus chapter 16, then we have another reason. Right? But the commentaries say, but I have other information. Right? What about the sin of the golden calf? That we see in the book of Exodus. We saw a verse in the book of Deuteronomy. It says that they should have been wiped out. Right? That Aaron and they should have been wiped out. Right? The whole question, what's going on? What's the point? Point is, if you have a certain, if you know certain facts and you know certain information. So if you know certain information, what does that mean? That means if I have a question over here, other information is given, throws off the other information I already had, right? Or maybe it contradicts. So now, if it contradicts, right? If the information contradicts over here, so that's a different type of question. Totally different type of question. But a person should never say, I mean, you could ask the question. Not going to say you can't ask the question, right? But, I've seen too many people, say it in a little bit, or let's say a lot of an arrogant way. And they say, well, this is like this. And if this is like this, it's similar to that, so I can make the following conclusion. Right? Now, who says they're connected? Maybe they're not connected at all. Right? Maybe there's no connection between them. But someone will say, but I see there's a connection. Okay, then you have to ask the question. Then you have to have someone competent. Can I make such a deduction? Right? But again, the Talmud warns us and says, do not think things are necessarily comparable unless the rabbis tell you they are. Right? We're not making up our own Torah over here. Can't make assumptions. If the assumption is true, okay, that's a different issue. If that assumption is true. And even if it is true, can I say something similar to that is exactly the same case? I was learning something this morning, right? Different ways of looking at a similar thing. Is it true? Is the assumption true? Right? But there might be a contradiction. And there was. Right? One place says like this, the other place says just the opposite. The question is, okay, so how do you deal with it? What's the case? Right? But not everything is clear cut. If it's clear cut, okay. If it's not clear cut, can always say things are similar. Right? A point in case. Or let's say better, I think I just said that backwards. A case in point. Case in point. Right? We know that the Torah says you're not allowed to cook a calf in its mother's milk. It says it 3 times. 1 to tell you can't cook it, even if you don't eat it. 1 to tell you can't eat it. 1 to tell you that you're not allowed to get benefit from it. So now, I would have a question. What does the Torah tell me? Cannot cook a calf in its mother's milk. So what does a calf mean? What would I think? What would I understand? Meat, red meat. Right? The Torah prohibition would be kosher slaughtered calf, kosher milk or cheese, put them together, cook them, that's Torah prohibition. Everything else would be rabbinical. Right? So if a Jew went to McDonald's, it's forbidden. Obviously, but the rabbinic prohibition. Why is it rabbinic? Because you don't have kosher meat. You don't have kosher cheese. It's still forbidden. Not going to say not. Right? But it's a rabbinic prohibition of a combination of milk and meat. Fine. But now there's another question. Right? The other question is, what about chicken? So I'd say, what about it? They'd say, well, the Torah says a calf. Doesn't say chicken. Doesn't say birds. Right? Totally doesn't say birds. So would I say that's the same thing? It's a good question. What do the rabbis tell us? Rabbis tell us chicken's going to be forbidden. You know why chicken's forbidden? Chicken's forbidden because you might forget. And if you eat chicken and milk together, chicken and cheese together, I might eat red meat and cheese together. So then someone's going to say, what about fish? So there is a custom by some Sephardic people, they don't eat fish and cheese together. Right? They don't eat fish and cheese. Or fish and milk. Meat and fish, we don't eat together in general. It's considered a danger. Right? That's why, let's say on Shabbos, you have fish, and then you're going to have meat, so you eat something in between. Have a cup of wine, a little bit of wine, a schnapps, whatever. Right? And you do something in between. You eat something in between or drink something in between because it's considered a danger. Fine. What about fish? Is fish considered meat? No, not in this case. So fish and cheese, you'd be allowed to. Again, some Sephardic people don't eat it. right? For different reasons. But fish, according to Ashkenazim, is not meat in this case. Now, how would somebody know chicken and milk is forbidden? They know because it'd be something that, that they learned. But a person can make a mistake and say, or maybe they're going to think, maybe it doesn't apply. Why wouldn't it apply? It wouldn't apply because I could say chicken's not the same thing as meat. When the Torah said meat, it meant red meat. Torah doesn't tell me chicken. Totally doesn't tell me chicken. So I might think it's okay. Right? So, or someone could say the other way. Chicken is meat. No one's going to say chicken isn't meat. Unless it's not real chicken. Right? If it's real chicken, it's meat. Finished. So then they'll say, well, it's not red meat. When the Torah said a calf in its mother's milk, it meant chicken. Sorry, it meant red meat, not chicken. So chicken is okay. Now, how do I know? Because the rabbis tell me. Rabbis tell me it's forbidden. Right? So before a person does anything, got to look into it. Got to think about it. But we got to be careful making assumptions. Right? You got to be careful making assumptions. And the rabbis make clear. You don't need me to tell you this. The rabbis make clear. You don't make assumptions unless you have precedent. If there's a precedent, different issue. Totally different issue. Right? But, if we have a source, to say this is true, that's a different issue. But for us to make assumptions in general, that's a problem. That's a problem. So there's a lot of information out there, okay? There is. No question. There's a lot to know. Tremendous amount to know. If a person's not sure, you can try to look it up, go to Rabbi Dr. Google. Google doesn't give you an answer. You got to ask somebody. But a person should never, ever make any assumptions. Can't make assumptions. Because how do you know that assumption is true? Because someone is coming, from the outside looking in, and they're not sure. How do you know that assumption is true? I see people make all kinds of mistakes, silly mistakes. Really because they're assuming certain things are true. And the reality is their assumptions are wrong. I'm not even going to go into the Christians and the Karaites and whatever. I'm just saying, even people who want truth. They said, well, I thought it was like this and like this. Well, that's the problem. You thought. Doesn't matter what you think. Is it true? Is it similar enough for me to make that statement? Yes or no? And if you're not sure, you can't do it. Well, I thought it was like this and like this. Well, where'd you get that information from? Could be someone taught them wrong. Could be they read it wrong. Could be, any number of things. Any number of things. But making assumptions gets you into problems. Right? It definitely gets you into problems. Right? I don't think there's any question. There's no question about it. That will get you into problems. That'll get you into problems. Right? We can't make such statements. Can't do it. Unless I have other information. Right? If I have other information, that's different. Right? Otherwise, gotta be very careful. So, again, if a person isn't sure, you gotta ask if you don't get the information. You can't just say, well, I think like this and I'll do it. Because the problem is you make a mistake. A lot of times you make a mistake. It's very common. Very, very common. So that you got to be careful. So not only that, but again, a person, when is it the most important to have rabbinic guidance? Some will say, wow, how am I going to get through the conversion process without it. True. But you know when you really need it is after. Most people think that's crazy. What do you mean? After conversion, that's when I need the most help? Yeah, because then you're going to be left on your own. Then you get less help. Then people stop inviting you for Shabbos, let's say. Can happen. It definitely can happen. So that being the case, you always need guidance. Person may think, okay, I took all the classes, I passed, I converted, now I can do things on my own. Okay, whatever knowledge you have is good. Right? It's certainly good. But there are going to be a lot of things you're going to need guidance on. If it's something obvious, you got the answer, good. If it's something you're not sure on, for sure you have to ask. Because most likely you can make a mistake and you can't guess. By certain things, if I don't know what a blessing, what to make a blessing on. Right? What the blessing is. Right? I'm not sure. Can I rely on this? Can I not rely on it? Etc. So what's the best case scenario? You don't know, you don't eat it. But I'm hungry. Eat something else that you know. There's not like, Monty Hall's, let's make a deal. Right? It's not like, okay, I'll think this, I'll think that. I'll do it and everything's good. Who says it's going to be good? Who says you're going to get the right answer? Well, it's the thought that counts. No, it's not. Kaufman's law is you do it right. If you're not going to do it, don't bother. A little bit fanatical to say. But at the same time, do it right. When a person makes a mistake, hopefully they don't make the same mistake again. They find out where they made the mistake. Now they know not to make a similar mistake. Okay, they're growing pains. But you don't get anywhere without asking. There's just too much. There's just too much out there. And it's, this contradictory information. As well. So a person has to be careful. You have to be careful about, where you're going to get information from. I'll give one example. A person wants to learn Hebrew. It's one of the classes I don't teach. Right? But let's say someone wants to learn Hebrew. So if they want to learn Hebrew, right, so go online, checking out different people. This one good, that one's good. A lot of people teach Hebrew online. Guess what? They're Messianic. A lot of them. That's how they draw people. Oh, we'll teach you Hebrew. Great. Then they draw you in otherwise. Right? In other ways. Then you got to be careful. Right? We mentioned before, and that's, I'm not going to overkill it. You got to be careful where you get information from. Yeah, someone asks about getting tablet for medications. Yeah. Is all of technology, and the question was before, I'll just throw it out there. Someone asked about gel caps. What do you do about gel caps for medicine? Let's say it's not kosher gelatin. And a certain medicine you have to take. Let's say a person has high blood pressure. The person that has high blood pressure on that medication for life, most likely. So if a person has high blood pressure, let's say that medication only comes in a caplet. Sorry, in a gel cap. Now you have to take it. No other medication, let's say, to take. This is the medication you have to take. So one piece of advice that I heard many years ago is, okay, even if it's bitter, you should try and take it in the tissue. In other words, you don't have to swallow a whole tissue over here. You take a little bit of a tissue, put the gel cap in and swallow it, so you're not getting benefit from the gel cap itself. And it's not going to hurt. Tissue's not going to hurt. The effect of the effect of the medicine. Anyway, we had a discussion, an old discussion about that. I don't know if it was the same thing, but yes, that was one of the last things I spoke about. So someone asked, all technology Jewish discussion advanced in the Talmud, blood transfusions, medications. Yeah, there are a lot of things. There are a lot of things, that are spoken about in the Talmud. Person has, I don't know, certain things that hurt or whatever, certain things that a person could take. Now, some will say based on that, if you took the remedy that, let's say, the Talmud gives and it doesn't work. Let's say for argument's sake, it doesn't work. Right? It doesn't get the person better. So the question is, then what happened? So what happened is, it could be that remedy today doesn't have any potency. Right? Could be in their day, it worked and it worked well. Could be certain things might have changed, that it wouldn't work. Right now, there's obviously certain technology that Talmud doesn't speak about. Right? Give an example. Torah tells me one of the three things it says explicitly about the laws of Shabbos, you're not allowed to kindle a fire. Now, the question is, what about electricity? The vast majority of rabbinical authorities today hold electricity is forbidden. On Shabbos, the only question is why. What category does it come under? Right? Not the discussion for now, but the point is, they'll say, well, the rabbis are adding to the Torah. Well, in the time of the Talmud, were they able to discuss, electric currents? No. Before their time. Before their time. So therefore, there are things that Talmud doesn't speak about. Right? That would be one of them. Talmud speaks about astrology. Yeah. Speaks about astrology. It speaks about the billions of stars. If you do a calculation, according to the Talmud, of how many stars that exist, you're talking more than 2,500 years ago, more, and they had already figured out, how many stars exist, almost to the exact amount of what scientists say today. So, yeah, that type of knowledge they had. That type of knowledge they had. They talk about blood transfusions. They talk about bloodletting. Take like a leech or whatever. Suck out blood. I don't know if it's exactly, similar to a, to a blood transfusion, but many things. Many things. They talk about. That exists. Am I going to say everything? I don't know. I don't know. They talk about vaccinations, not that I know of. Certainly not that I know of. It's in rabbinic responses. A lot of these things, organ transplants, electricity, all that. That's all in rabbinic response, right? You're talking, a lot of these things are later. So so you're talking maybe, 300 years ago, 400 years ago, something like that. A lot of this information and a lot of technological advances, right? And how to deal with it. Now, obviously, these great rabbinic authorities, where are they going to start? Where are they going to start gathering this information from? Well, they're going to see what applies from the Torah and then see how that's learned out. And then use the Talmud as precedent and say, well, this is like this, and therefore we can apply it like this, and therefore, etc. Because that's where it all comes from. Now the question is, you have to know the sources, and you have to know how to use the sources. If anyone's ever looked at a response by Moshe Feinstein, blessed memory, it's thousands on all kinds of different things. And he extrapolates all over the Talmud, all over. Talmud, rabbinical law, Shulchan Aruch, but the sources, coming from there. That's my Rebbe once. He's got a lot of practical questions. And the questions are and his answers are relatively short. He'll go through where he got it from in the Talmud, the Shulchan Aruch a little bit, and then he'll say why it's permissible, not permissible, etc. So I asked him once, I said, why don't you give all the sources? Straight from the Talmud to the Rambam, Code of Jewish Law, Shulchan Aruch. Why not? Why not go through the whole thing? He said, if I did that, there's only one problem. This would be thousands of pages. No one would read it. People today want quick answers. They want to cut to the chase. They don't have to read page after page after page. They want to know what to do, right, in practical terms. So again, where are the sources? Where are the rabbinic authorities, of the generations? Where are they getting the sources from? From the Gemara. That's where it starts. Obviously, it's going to be based on different verses, whatever. But they're going to extrapolate because God gave them the ability to do so. We're going to say, oh, they're adding, subtracting to the Torah. So in the book of Deuteronomy, what does it tell me? You got to listen to the Kohanim, the Levites in every generation. And if they say right is left, left is right, still have to listen to them. So in every generation, they're going to quote the sources and they're going to explain what the sources mean and how it applies. See, that's greatness. That's taking things from thousands of years ago and applying them today, and how they do apply. And a lot of things, many things apply today. Yeah, I'll give one example. You look at the laws of ribbis, that a Jew is not allowed to lend money to another Jew with interest. You can do it to a non-Jew, not to a Jew. Right? So a lot of questions, of ribbis, come up. Let's say, a person buys a house. They buy an apartment. Now, when you buy an apartment, most people, are taking out a loan, taking out a mortgage. Now, if it's a Jewish-owned bank, I get a problem. What's the problem? They're going to say, okay, we're going to give you, $200,000, but you're going to pay us back $250,000. How have I? You're going to pay almost the value of the house, right? Most likely. Certainly here in Israel, it's like that. It's like you're taking out a loan, and the interest, depending on how much interest it is, you're going to be paying almost as much, or you're going to pay more, almost double, what the thing is worth. But that's a different issue. But what's the point? The point is, so a bank's going to say, fine, we're going to give you $200,000. We're going to charge you, 2.5% interest. Now, what's the problem? They can't do that. If it's a Jew, you can't charge another Jew with interest. So now, these are very, very complicated cases. Probably one of the hardest chapters of the Talmud to learn. Right? Not easy at all. But I'm just going to make it very simple. And that is, in such a case, that would be forbidden. Right? So here in Israel, a person takes, a Jew takes a loan, from a bank. Should be forbidden. Shouldn't be allowed to. There is a way around it. Right? One way around it's called what we call a heter iska. What's a heter iska? Heter iska means you're giving the bank the ability to use your money. They can reinvest your money. Right? That's pretty much what they're doing. They're giving you money. They're giving you money, so to speak. But they're using it also. In other words, the money that they get, they're using it to invest in other things. That's how banks work in general. Right? So therefore, it's not just a straight loan. They're actually doing something with the money that you're paying back. Right? Not just going into their pocket. Right? It's going into investing. They're using it in other ways. Now, it's a little bit complicated. Why? Because a lot of the banks, who are they owned by? Secular Jews. Now, secular Jews will put it up there because, they'll sign something, in order that ultra-Orthodox Jews will borrow money from their bank. Now, one of the problems is they don't believe in it. They're just doing it because, not for the halachic basis, or the problem of lending with interest. They're doing it, they want more clientele. But do they really believe in what it stands for? Absolutely not. So there are rabbinical authorities that hold beyond the shadow of a doubt. They 100% hold that's no good. It's no good. Why? Because they don't believe in it. It doesn't matter if they sign this document and they sign this document over here. What does it matter? If they don't believe in it, according to those opinions, then it's not valid. Now, not everyone agrees. It's a difference of opinion among rabbinic authorities. Right? But it's complicated. If a person, let's say here in Israel, we'll make it easy. Person got an electric bill. They pay it late. Why do they pay it late? Because they don't have money. So they pay it late. What's the problem? You pay it late, you charge interest. They charge interest. Right? So many rabbinical authorities will say, you got to pay it on time. No matter if you have to borrow money, pay it on time, so they're going to pay interest. Because they're going to charge you interest automatically. But I don't have the money, I don't have to borrow from. Okay, so that's going to be a transgression over here. You're under onus. That's okay to a certain extent. You're under onus over here. You didn't have the money. Right? So what are you supposed to do? So they'll say, find the money. Go borrow from someone. Pay it. However, why are you going to transgress Torah prohibition over lending money? Paying with interest. Here is a much more common problem. In the States and other places, let's say it's a Jewish-owned business, and let's say you buy an appliance. Here it's very common. Let's say you buy an appliance. You buy an appliance, they say, okay, it's going to cost you, if you pay up front, you pay it all now, it's going to cost you $500. If you pay, I'll give you an installment plan. You can pay it over 6 months, it's going to cost you $650. That's forbidden. That 100% is forbidden. Why? Because you're paying more. You're paying more over here when really the value is much less. Now, it doesn't matter if you agree or not. Right? Totally irrelevant. They're giving you a payment plan. So you're sort of withholding money and paying more over the long term for something that's worthless. That's the problem with ribbis. That's the problem charging with interest. Because they'll tell you the regular price is $200. You want to pay it in what do you call it? In installments, it'll cost you $350. That's interest. Right? But again, it's only between Jew and Jew. If it's a non-Jewish company, they charge you interest, not a problem. Not a problem because it's the way of the world. Because this is a big novelty. I'll just throw this out there. It's a huge novelty. If I lend someone $1,000, if I had $1,000 to lend, I lend someone $1,000, right? I say, you know what? You can pay me back in 3 months, but I want you to pay me $1,200. Now, would that be my right to do? Yeah, 100%. Why? I'm lending out my money. It's not doing anything. Not doing anything for me. I'm not making any money here. Why should I lose out? I shouldn't have to lose out. Comes on the Torah and says, you're right. So between a Jew and a non-Jew, not a problem. Between a Jew and a Jew, what does the Torah tell me? Can't lend with interest. You're not allowed to lend with interest. Him, you have to lend for free. Even if your money's not being worked for you, doesn't matter. You have to lend them for free. Now, the Talmud there says, Tractate Bava Metzia, it says, but that's the way of the world. That's what everyone does. What, you got to go to a bank, they're going to give an interest-free loan? They'll never make money. They'll never make money. That's the way of the world. Comes on the Gemara and says, you're right. That's the way of the world. You know what? It's still forbidden. You're still not allowed to do it. Even if it's the way of the world. Right? Even if it's the way of the world. So therefore, I can't do it. Right? Not only that, I'll just throw it out there. Someone who writes a document, they're gonna borrow money with interest. Right? Go to a bank, for instance. Or forget a bank. We'll make it easier. You borrow money from your friend. Right? So you're gonna write out a document. I owe so-and-so, whatever, I'm borrowing, $1,000. And I agree in 3 months to pay $1,200. Right? That's the deal. You sign it, the other person signs it, and you have 2 witnesses. You have 2 witnesses also sign it, because if you don't pay it back, they're the guarantors. So if you don't pay it, they'll pay it. Hopefully. Hopefully it doesn't come to that. Let's say. Now the Mishnah says, if you do such a thing, who transgresses? You tell me, the person who borrowed the money and the person who lent the money, they both transgress. But that's not true. Because the Mishnah says, also transgresses? The witnesses. The witnesses who signed. Whoever wrote the document transgresses. They didn't lend money with interest. They didn't borrow money with interest. Right? But they're an accomplice over here. They're an accomplice even though they didn't borrow or lend the money. They're 100% an accomplice because they signed on something and they did something that's forbidden. So it's as if they did the thing itself. So the laws of lending money between Jews with interest are very complex. No question, extremely complex. Some of the most complex laws in all of Judaism. Even with that, you still don't know how to do it. Even if it's the way of the world. Right? Totally forbidden. Totally forbidden. Right? So something like that. The Talmud uses certain language. Like marketplace in their time language. And we apply it to every day. Right? Rabbis can do that. They have the right to do that. They can say, okay, this is what this says. Now, what does it mean? We're not living in that same society. So even if we're not living in that same society, you can say, well, maybe it doesn't apply. We're not going to say that. The question is, in what case does it apply? Does it apply in our society today? Right? Again, these things are more complex. Right? But even if it doesn't speak in our language today, we can make it user-friendly to speak in our language to understand that it would even apply today. It does apply. Right? It applies, in many ways. Many, many ways. I just mentioned a few. Right? But, again, it is complex. Definitely is complex. So now, so these laws, it's brought down the code of Jewish law. So the commentator is going to say, okay, how does it apply this way, that way, the other way? What's the base? Where does it come from? Comes from the Talmud. That's where it comes from. Right? Even modern day questions today. I'll give an example. I had a question once, many years ago, that there's someone in hospice, and we know someone in hospice, they go to hospice to die. And someone has cancer. What's secondary cause of cancer? That a person dies from pneumonia. Now, the hospital knows how much food and nutrients to give that they're not killing the person. That 100% they're not killing the person. But they're really keeping them alive. I mean, some places are killing people, but, if they're keeping them alive, their immune system is going to be very weak. They get a cold, they get pneumonia, they die from it. They can potentially die from it. Now, the question is that direct or indirect? Right? So you tell me it's indirect. It's not direct unless they're killing them outright. They're not feeding them. That's direct. Right now, you're going to say, well, how do I know it's indirect? What's my source that is indirect? You know what the source is? So the Talmud says. Talmud talks about many cases where I have something that's direct. Right? Let's say I hold someone's head. There's a dike. You hold someone's head right by a hole in the dike that you're holding out. You let go of the hole, the person drowns. That's direct. That's direct. But what if a person ties someone up on a railroad track? They can't get out. No one can help them. And a train is coming in 2 hours. Is that direct or indirect? Or let's say, Talmud asks these questions. Right? Not by train, but, another case, you tied someone up. Not you. Somebody tied someone up in the sun. Right? It's 43 degrees Celsius, like 108. Right? You tie them up in the sun. There's no one else around. You take off. Person dies. Heat stroke. Is that direct or indirect? They tell me maybe that's more direct because the sun's already out. But what if it's only going to get to 108 degrees or 43 degrees Celsius? It's only going to get that way in 2-3 hours. Similar to my case of a train that's only going to come. It's not coming right now. Is that direct or indirect? Talmud asked the question. Again, not by train, but by other cases. By other cases. Person, give another example. Talmud brings in, a person shoots a bow and an arrow. Right? Shoots it up in the air. Wind takes it, and then the wind takes it and hits somebody. And kills somebody. Are you liable? Is that your action? Maybe it's not my action. The wind took it. But whose original action was it? Yours. but was it very windy when you shot it? It wasn't. A lot of factors here. Right? These are precedents. So now you have to know, according to those pieces of Talmud, how we hold, how the code of Jewish law goes. These are complicated. I'm not saying not, but there's precedent, 100% precedent. So that's where the response would come, in the 1600s, 1700s, 1800s. It's all based on questions from the Talmud and extrapolations from these things and how it applies. Right? It's what rabbis are good at doing. Is taking these examples that seem maybe far-fetched or not even far-fetched, but they seem that no, that doesn't apply today. Say what? It does. Right? We can make cases where it does. Yeah, someone asks, I hope that answered the question. That should have answered that question. Someone asks, it's heavily raining out on Shabbos. You need to go to synagogue. How do you get around not opening an umbrella? You don't. That was easy. You get wet. That's what you do. But I got to walk 5 blocks. I got to walk a mile. Okay. If you got an obligation to pray, that's what you do. Now I live 7 minutes. 7 minutes from, where I normally pray. On Shabbos. So I remember last year, a couple years ago, that one Shabbos morning, so it was pouring. So I said, okay, it doesn't look like it's stopping. I'm just going to go. So I went. Now, some people, which I should, invest in, but some people have these ponchos, right? They have these ponchos where they have, they have a thing for your head also. You can put a hat in it. It covers the hat. It's a poncho, right? So basically, person wears the poncho over your coat when it's pouring. So the poncho gets wet, but the coat doesn't get wet, and you don't really get that wet, from it. So I don't have one of these. I should get one, right? I don't know. They look kind of funny, but I guess that's just me. But so if a person wore something like that, okay, that's gonna get wet. Your body's not gonna get wet. Your hat's not gonna get wet, right? Going to synagogue, you won't get wet. Now let's say you don't have one, and you're not wearing your hat to synagogue. So let's say you had an Eruv will make it easy. You had a hat cover on your hat. So at least your head's not gonna get soaking wet. Okay, but I don't wear my hat to synagogue usually Shabbos day, right? So Friday night that wouldn't necessarily be an issue. So what happened? I went to synagogue. I got drenched. Right? My towels didn't get drenched. It was underneath my coat. And anything else I had, I was carrying. With whatever, a book, papers, whatever. They didn't get wet because I had it in a plastic bag. My head, I was soaked. Right? Okay. So what happened? I got wet. Dried myself off a little bit, and that was it. Someone said, "Oh, get you a couple of paper towels, whatever. Gotta make sure obviously you don't squeeze any water out, whatever." So, wow, I don't think this is gonna help. I think you need a towel. I said, "Yeah, I could probably use a towel." I got wet. My pants weren't soaked. I mean, coat was wet. Coat was definitely wet. My pants didn't get very wet. Shoes a little bit wet. Okay, so what do? There's nothing to do. What are you gonna say? Is that what God wants? God want me to get soaked? Yeah, he does. There's a famous story of the Chazon Ish. Chazon Ish, Rav Avram Shai Karo, it's a blessed memory. His hat got crunched on Shabbos. So he yelled he wasn't allowed to put it, to make it look normal. He yelled that was the prohibition of buying it, of, rebuilding, whatever, restructuring, whatever you want to call it. So he's walking to synagogue and his hat is like, imagine someone wearing, this black hat and it's like crunched. It's just like crunched here, crunched there, crunched on top. And someone asked him, someone asked him about it. So he says, I hold this forbidden. Right? He was like, the preeminent halachic authority at that time. And he held it was forbidden. You can't fix it. So he says, come on, Rebbe, but what about, cover the Torah? What about the honor for Torah? And the Chazon Ish looked at them, or looked at this person, and said, this is the honor of Torah. Why is it the honor of Torah that his hat looks crunched? It's the honor of Torah because he's not doing anything to fix it. Because he holds it's forbidden to do it on Shabbos. That's the honor and glory of Shabbos. So you're going to say, really? I'm going to get soaked? That's the honor and glory of Shabbos? Yeah. That's the honor and glory of Shabbos. So I tell somebody, what you do in such a situation. What you could do, what I did when I was younger, much younger, is before I was married, many years ago, I bought rain gear. I went to an Army Navy store, and I bought these pants. I bought these, plastic rain pants. Look kind of funny, but okay. So anytime I had to walk anywhere and it was pouring, I put them on. People may say something, look, this, that. What do I care? My pants are dry. My pants are totally dry. Not a problem. I can even do it on Shabbos. So I would say, if it's pouring rain, invest in a poncho. Your clothes won't get wet per se, right? You get a long enough poncho, right? They have these long, like I said, I can't do it. It just, to me, it looks too funny to do. The head of the yeshiva where I daven, I pray. So a couple weeks ago it was raining. So he had this, this long poncho. So he said, oh, I wish I had a strimal, because it's a big hood, so it would fit a strimal. So if you had, a strimal or a big enough hat, not a problem. But, obviously it's going to cover it. So I said, well, if your head's a little bit bigger, so then you wouldn't have a problem. He goes, no, my head's big enough. He's like, my head's big enough. I mean, obviously, he's probably about like 6'2", 6'3". So, he's a lot taller than me, and his head, much bigger than mine. But it was just very funny. He's like, no, my head's big enough. He's like, my head's big enough, and everyone just sat there and laughed, right? So that's my job. Either I make people laugh or cry. Nothing in between. It's just whatever, just kind of funny. It was like, it was last Shabbos day. So I was out of what do you call it? I was allowed to go to synagogue for, since last Tuesday night. A week ago Tuesday night, because I tested positive for COVID. Thank God, just like a bad cold, bad cold, everything's good. So I went to synagogue Shabbos day. So when I went to synagogue Shabbos day, so normally, everyone goes in, which they did the Shiva Good Shabbos, and he had COVID like a couple weeks ago. So I told him, I said, listen, I just came out of isolation. I said, I don't know if I don't know if you want to shake or not. So we arm bumped. Now you have to understand, it's just very funny, because here's someone that again, I wouldn't do it with Sternbuch. That's already a little bit of exaggeration here. But here's someone who's like bona fide Torah scholar according to everyone, but whatever, he lives in this world, very much lives in this world. So it was just very funny. We arm bumped. So a bunch of guys in the yeshiva, behind me in line, just everyone started to laugh. So I said, okay, you do what you got to do, right? But in any case, I digress. So the question was, what do you do in such a situation? So I would tell you, buy one of these things. I'm sure you can find it online. I can probably find it online. You buy one of these long ponchos, right? So in the winter, it'll cover your coat, cover your coat and cover your body, right? That'll take you out of the problem. Now, if you have, if a poncho that's only, only goes down to your, barely down to your knees, yeah, it's going to be a problem. You're going to get wet. Okay. All right. So what do? You know what you do? Carpenter's language, you get wet. Because the problem with opening an umbrella. There's no way around it. What's the problem with opening an umbrella? Even if the umbrella is open, right? Because you're using the area underneath it. It's like a temporary tent. Can't make a temporary tent on Shabbos even if it's open before. Can't use that area underneath. So that's forbidden. That's forbidden even if it's open before. I think I say, but I got a mile to walk to synagogue. Okay. If you're a Jew and you're a guy, you got to go to synagogue. Unless it's like a blizzard or whatever, right? But you should go. People say, hey, it's only rabbinical. It's this. We can be so lenient. What are you going to do? Every time it sprinkles on Shabbos, you're not going to go to synagogue? You got to go to synagogue. Right? So you get wet. In the winter, let's say it's snowing. Let's say it's not a blizzard, but it's snowing also. So you get dressed appropriately. You can wear gloves. You can wear a hat, even if there's no air. Why can I do that? Because that's considered protecting the body. Any clothing to protect the body, that's good. Right? A hat cover, if you don't have an Eruv, is a problem. Because that hat cover, that plastic on the hat is protecting the hat, not the body. If I have an Eruv, very good, so I can wear it. If I don't have an Eruv, I can't do it. was just funny. The other day, I was up north and I went to one bus station. I don't know. These security guards always like say all kinds of interesting things, So anyway, it was raining. It was raining. So I had a plastic bag. The normal hat cover I had ripped. So I used a plastic bag. So as I was going through security, this guy, he's a Jew, this secular Jew goes, "What are you doing wearing this plastic bag on your head?" I was like, "It's raining outside. What kind of question is that? It's raining. I didn't want to get wet. I want to get my hat wet." The guy just looks at me. I was like, "What? You never seen the plastic bag on someone's head before?" I had a few interesting, encounters with, with people going through security. So normally I have like, a bag of food. I have, I have another bag of just books. So I always tell them, what's in there? Books. So usually they let me go. So, when I go there on Monday, usually on my class on Sunday, I lost my voice. I usually lose my voice, right? So as I'm going through security, the guy's like, what's in the bag? I'm like, books, right? He's like, what? You don't know how to speak? I'm like, books. Can't wait, what can you do? I can only, yell so loud if you don't have a voice. So it's like, I think tomorrow, hopefully, when I go there, I'm gonna be the first one to say something. I'm not gonna let them say anything to me, but it was just very funny. Like, what are you doing with that, that plastic bag on your head? It's raining. I didn't want to get wet. I want to get my hat wet. You didn't see it's raining? I don't know. I thought that was an obvious answer. It's just, I don't know. I don't know why these things happen to me. I'm sure they happen to other people also, but I don't know. I just, what do you do with those books? I don't know. Learning? Teaching? Oh, okay. What do you think I'm doing with it? Gonna use this as an ironing board? Hit someone over the head? Stop a terrorist attack? What do you think I'm doing with it? These are books to learn, you moron. Like, what are you thinking? Oh, you're a security guard. I forgot. You don't have half a brain. You just make fun of religious people. And whatever. And that seems to be the whole point. It's okay. Oh, religious person. This here's not so religious. We're going to have some fun with him. What are you doing wearing that plastic bag on your head? Really? That's what's bothering you? You can't sleep at night? Come on. I digress here. But it was kind of funny, though. I was thinking, like, I didn't even know what to think. I was like, don't you see it's raining? I mean, okay, the rain had, it pretty much stopped. I was like, but don't you see it's raining out? Don't you see I'm wearing a hat? Don't want to get it wet? I don't know. I thought that was pretty easy. Like, yeah, whatever, just go. Now, sometimes they'll just look at me and say, okay, just go. I was like, you want to look? No, just go. I have that effect on people sometimes. It's just the way it goes. Anyway, I digress here. But people should be entertained if they have to listen to me anyway. Yeah. So now it's the answer to the question. How do you get around an umbrella if it's raining? You can't on Shabbos. Right? A festival, also it's forbidden. Even though you're allowed to carry, on a festival, it's still going to be forbidden to use an umbrella. You get wet. No way around it. Yeah. Any other questions? As I always say, you never know what you get from this one. Usually say that by controversial issues, but, we'll use it for this also. Yeah. Any other questions? All right, there are no questions, and I'm going to sign out. Anyone has any questions, I do this every Tuesday and Thursday, 10 o'clock Eastern time, 5 o'clock Israel time. Anyone has any questions, find me on Facebook at Michael Chaim Kaufman, or you can find me on Orthodox Conversion Judaism. You can send me an email, rabbichaimkaufman@gmail.com, RABBICHAIMCOFFMAN @gmail.com. Wish everyone a good beginning of the day or end of the day or